Find.
Hi, my name's Molly, and today I'm going to be talking about finding joy. The way that one of the ways that I have found joy in my life is through a little store that some of you may know. It's called IKEA. It's this super underground, tiny little shop. I don't know, you might not know it. It's really underground. But I love IKEA, like a lot. And when I was a little kid, my mom used to take me and my sister and my dad out to IKEA, and we used to make a whole day trip out of it, because the closest one is 45 minutes away, and it's in Canton. And when you have two small children who are both really, really annoying, that's kind of a long drive in a minivan. So my mom always, she took us there for a good 5 or 6 hours. And in that 5 or 6 hours, we would drop my little sister off at the little, kids' play place. And my mom and my dad and I would go through the whole showroom. And I would jump on every bed. I would put my feet on every single couch. Yes, my shoes were still on. And I would try to cook in every single kitchen, even though my head did not reach the top of the stove. I could not see. I was fumbling around in the dark. It was terrible. But we would go through the entire showroom, and then we'd make it to the Swedish restaurant, and my mom would let me get whatever I wanted, and I would completely pig out on chicken tenders and Swedish meatballs, and it was phenomenal. I had the time of my life. Every, 3 to 6 months, we would go, and I would be over the moon. Now, basically, when we went to IKEA, food was kind of the only thing that we ever got. We never really bought any of the IKEA furniture when we went to IKEA, which seems counterproductive, but trust, we had a vision. But that didn't really matter very much to me, or I think to my mom. I don't know, ask her. Because the point of going to the IKEA wasn't to buy the furniture. It wasn't about the furniture. It was about spending time together as a family, doing something that I enjoyed, and watching me happy would make my parents happy. So, sorry. So, the important part is that we were finding joy in something that was immaterial. Even though we were going to a store that was, you're supposed to buy stuff, we were finding joy in immaterial things like spending time with each other and, just hanging out together as a family, minus my sister, because, we don't have to talk about that. It's okay. But we would find joy in being together rather than in the actual material objects, and that stuck with me throughout the rest of my whole life. So, moral of the story, pay attention and appreciate the small joys that you find in life, and find joy in small things in life on purpose, and that will stick with you through many hard times, and it will be comforting, and looking back on those things will make you a lot happier the second time than it did the first.
Recognize.
Recognizing joy can be a difficult practice. What does it mean to recognize joy? Hi again, my name is Maggie, and I'm a junior in high school. As high schoolers, my friends and I find ourselves driving around a lot, sometimes for fun, sometimes to pass time, and sometimes to actually go places. My friend Callie and I always drive around a lot. We listen to music, some of which is pretty obscure, like I Always Wanted a Brother from the Mufasa movie, which for some reason we have a weird fixation on. But no matter where we are going, what songs we are listening to, or how we are feeling, we find these moments, and in these moments, nothing matters. We drive around all the time, like I said. There was this one time, there was this bomb threat at our school, and without hesitation, we left. Callie had just gotten her license and bought her car maybe a week prior. So we walked really fast to her car and did what we do now the most and just sit in her car and hang out. And even though this was a scary time, because there was in fact a bomb threat, we just were having fun because we were with each other and doing what she likes to call mom lore, making memories. That to me is joy. It's not about my own joy that I'm feeling, but it's the recognition of the joy in our shared experiences. It's the joy in each other's company, in the laughter, and just being able to be together. Joy often isn't something that we plan. It happens in the simplest moments, the ones we don't anticipate, the ones that sneak up on us in the middle of an ordinary day. But when we recognize them, when we hold on to them, we remind ourselves that joy is always there, just waiting for us to notice it. Thank you.
Create. Slump by S.T. Tuchin. Can you appreciate the silence when the world goes quiet? Can you admire the darkness when the light of light burns out? What does it mean when the things you love fade away, when what you once adored brings nothing? Is there joy to find in nothingness? When joy just isn't there to find or to recognize, how do you make it? How do you create an emotion? These are some of the ways that we did.
The pandemic hit midway through my 7th grade year. I already hadn't been doing great, but suddenly I was quarantined at home, too. I tried to stay interested in schoolwork, going on walks, backyard badminton, playing ukulele with my dad. I emailed my friends, checked my phone to see if they'd replied, checked again, even before I'd heard any buzzing in my pocket. But despite all this, I found myself getting up later, going to bed earlier, sometimes sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. Sensing this change, both my parents and I were eager to find some fun activity to keep me occupied. In previous years, I had loved helping my neighbors arrange their fairy garden, but with social distancing, I couldn't create one with them that year. So, I decided to make my own fairy houses, out of the large collection of Legos that I loved playing with when I was younger. The fairy village started off small, with just a couple buildings, but each time I noticed how little kids gazed at it and smiled when they walked past our house, I wanted to build more. Gradually, I built new infrastructure for the Lego Fairy Garden, such as a school, a concert venue, a restaurant, a hospital, and even an outhouse. I named it Harbrookia, started making a website for it, and posted an AADL summer game code by it. I enjoyed making it, the neighborhood enjoyed seeing it, and my mom enjoyed seeing the younger and cuter children who skipped by with their parents and stopped to look at the fairy village. I loved the process of designing the Lego buildings and arranging the village, but even more so, I enjoyed seeing it bring others joy. I had taken the dull life of the pandemic and created joy within it by considering what had brought joy in the past and finding new ways to replicate it.
One Sunday night, when I got off the plane from New York City and was walking the jetway to go back home, I booked another Broadway ticket for that Thursday night. My family had been there to see 3 Broadway shows, and I had fallen in love with one of them. I wasn't done with the experience, and I wanted to see Romeo and Juliet again. It was an incredible production that had 2 of my favorite actors in the lead roles. It took Shakespeare and reinterpreted it into a modern retelling. incorporating dancing and auto-tuned music, running up and down the aisles, and changing the tone of the lines to have completely new meanings. I didn't know yet where I would stay or what exactly I would do when I went back in just 4 days, but I knew that I was going. I spent the next few days researching flights and places to stay. I got so excited when I figured out I had enough airline miles to get there. And when I stepped off the plane back into the city on Wednesday night, I immediately went to the stage door of the show. I was hoping to get my book signed by one of the cast members. I had already been to the stage door 3 times on my previous trip with no luck, so I was hopeful but not super optimistic. But it worked. I got my book signed and I was full of joy as I rode the subway to the cheap hostel I ended up booking. The next day, I wandered around New York until it was time to see the show I had come all the way back to see again. It was even better the second time. So good, in fact, that I ended up waking up at 5 a.m. the next morning when I normally wake up closer to noon to sit outside the theater for 4 hours in the freezing cold to try to get a ticket to see it for a 3rd time. I got the last seated ticket, and that Friday night, I saw the show again. I created so much joy for myself by being a little spontaneous, a little ridiculous, and taking my first solo trip to do something that I love.
A few weeks ago, we hosted a youth con here called Continuum, with capitalized letters for the con and the UU. Cons used to be very popular, but in recent years, they've dwindled in both strength and number. They're weekend-long events by youth for youth, with the intention of building relationships and creating a safe space. Stella talked about it briefly a few services ago, but I wanted to give you all the perspective of a youth. It was amazing. On Saturday evening, on the second night, some of the other youth led a worship. We sat in a circle in Jackson Chapel and were handed a pencil and a piece of paper. On this paper, we wrote down a statement that we wanted to share with the group. They were put in a basket, mixed up, and handed out again. The lights were dimmed and the papers were read out by candlelight by someone in the group, and if a statement applied to you, you said, "That's me." Many of the statements reflected something along the lines of, "I feel alone," "I worry about how I'm perceived," "I don't like the way that I look." It was a stark reminder that everyone is always hurting. We all have insecurities, worries, deadlines, problems, and struggles. For me, senior year has been the best year of high school by far. My teachers at school have been absolutely incredible. I got to work on theater shows with my best friends. I applied to colleges and got into my first choice school. So I haven't had to worry about college admissions since December. I made so many new friends. I connected with some of the underclassmen and the middle schoolers. I reconnected with some of the upperclassmen and people in my grade, and I've just generally had a fun and rewarding year. But I know that this won't last. Soon I'll have to struggle through making friends again, living away from home, getting a sustainable job, and all of the other responsibilities that come with adulthood. Which is why it's so important to relish the joy while it's here. If you're in a good chapter of life right now, set yourself up for success by building the habits while you have the energy and the motivation. Find what brings you joy and lean into it. Hold on as tight as you possibly can because you never know what the next week will bring. I'd like you all to participate in an exercise with me. We're going to practice finding, recognizing, and creating joy. I'm going to give you a prompt that relates to each one. I'll give you some time to think of an answer, and then I'll invite you to speak out loud your answer as one big group in a large chorus. If you're watching the live stream, feel free to write your answers down in the chat, or you can speak it out loud with your voice and make noise in the room where you are. All right, so first, take a look around and spot one thing in the room that brings you joy. Look at the people around you, down at your clothing, up at the building's architecture. One person or item that brings you joy. It doesn't have to be big, it could be the smallest, most insignificant thing in the world, but it still puts a smile on your face. All right, now on the count of 3, we're all gonna say it out loud, okay? 1, 2, 3. This is the find. You didn't plan for that joy to be there, it just happened to cross your path. What about earlier this morning? What is one moment from before this church service that brought you joy? What did you eat for breakfast? Did you see a cute squirrel on your drive here? I know it's early, but I guarantee there's something for everybody. Take a minute to think of something now. All right, now on the count of 3, we're gonna say it out loud again. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This is the recognize. Those experiences have already happened, and you're acknowledging the joy that they brought you. Maybe just thinking about it again put a smile on your face, and you've created another joyful moment for yourself. Now I invite you to come up with one thing that you're going to do or going to experience during the rest of this day. It could be something that you already have planned. It could be cake in the social hall, going on a walk, it's a really nice day out, or doing that one stressful task that you've been procrastinating for a month, but taking the 5 minutes now will be such a relief. All right, take a moment now to come up with that. All right, again on the count of 3, we'll share them. 1, 2, 3. Listen to that, all that joy bouncing around this room. That's amazing. This is the create. You've made an intentional decision to feel good, and you'll do that by creating a moment for yourself during the rest of this day. In fact, here's another example of the create. You showed up to church this morning. When you decided to join this congregation, you made an intentional choice to find a loving, open-minded community where you believed that you would blossom and grow. No one forced you to come here to congregate this morning, and yet you're still here. I'd like to leave you all with a quote from my English teacher, Dr. Mark Randolph. Right here, right now, I'm being happy. Thank you.